My name is Seraphina Hale. I am 27 years old. People around me often tell me that I have a beautiful smile, the kind that can make even the dullest morning feel brighter. They say I am cheerful, full of life, and that I make others feel safe and comfortable. They believe I am the kind of woman who has everything together: confidence in her walk, warmth in her laughter, and hope in her eyes. But the truth is, my smile is my greatest disguise. Behind it hides a storm that no one truly knows. I was born in a small town where life was simple but not always kind. My childhood wasn't filled with fairy tales. My father left us when I was just 8 years old, leaving my mother to raise me and my younger brother alone. She worked long hours in a bakery, hands cracked from kneading dough, body tired from standing all day, yet she always tried to shield us from the harshness of reality. At school, I used to laugh the loudest, play the hardest, and win people over with my endless chatter. But when I returned home, I would find my mother crying quietly at the kitchen table, bills spread out before her, hopelessness shadowing her tired face. That's when I learned to smile. A smile that wasn't for me, but for others. A smile that could ease pain, soften edges, and hide the brokenness inside. My mother needed to see her daughter happy. My brother needed to believe that everything was okay. So, I wore my smile like armor. And slowly, it became my identity. As I grew older, people mistook my strength for perfection. Teachers praised me, neighbors admired me, and friends leaned on me. They thought I was unshakable. But at night, when the world was silent, I would curl into my bed, crying into my pillow, suffocated by loneliness. My smile fooled them all, but it never fooled me. By the time I turned 18, life had taught me lessons that many don't learn until much later. I got a scholarship to study literature at university. I thought perhaps life was finally giving me a chance. I remember walking into that campus with big dreams. Books had always been my escape, and I believed education would be my path to a brighter future. That's where I met him, Adrian. Adrian was unlike anyone I had ever known. He was confident, charming, with an easy laugh that could fill a room. He had this way of making me feel seen, really seen, in a way I had never felt before. He noticed the little things, like how I twisted my hair when I was nervous, or how I paused before answering questions when I was unsure of myself. For the first time, I thought maybe my smile didn't need to be a mask. Maybe, with him, I could let it be real. Our friendship grew quickly, blooming into late-night study sessions, endless conversations about books and life, and stolen moments under the quiet sky. Slowly, I began to fall for him. And when he confessed that he felt the same, it was as if the walls I had built for years began to crumble. For the first time, I felt safe enough to put down my armor. I believed in love, in happiness, in a future that wasn't heavy with sorrow. But life has a cruel way of reminding you of your place. Adrian came from a wealthy family, his father a successful businessman, his mother a woman who carried herself like royalty. To them, I was nothing but a girl from a broken family with no status, no wealth, no worth. At first, Adrian defended me. He told them love was enough, that he didn't care about their judgment. And for a while, I believed him. But love alone couldn't silence their disapproval. His mother would call me names behind my back, comparing me to the kind of women she wanted for her son. His father dismissed me entirely, saying I would drag Adrian down. Slowly, I felt the shift. Adrian stopped holding my hand in front of them. He stopped standing up to their remarks. And one day, when the pressure became too much, he chose them over me. I still remember the night he ended it. We were sitting in the university library, the place where our story had begun. His hands shook as he told me he couldn't fight anymore, that his family's expectations were too heavy. I smiled at him, even as my heart shattered into pieces. I smiled because I didn't want him to see me break. I wanted him to believe I was strong, even when I wasn't. And when he walked away, taking with him every dream I had dared to dream, I sat there alone, smiling through tears that refused to stop falling. The following months were a blur. I buried myself in my studies, worked part-time jobs to support myself, and pretended everything was fine. People would comment on how resilient I was, how inspiring my strength was. They didn't know that every night, I sat in my tiny dorm room staring at the ceiling, wondering why love had left me behind. They didn't know that I often whispered into the darkness, asking if anyone could hear the sound of a breaking heart. But I kept smiling. I smiled at my professors, my classmates, even strangers. Because if I let the mask fall, I was afraid of what people would see. When I graduated, I returned home. My mother was weaker now, years of labor etched into her body. My brother had grown restless, chasing jobs that never lasted, drowning himself in alcohol when the world became too heavy. I became the glue holding us together, the one who had to keep smiling so the family wouldn't fall apart. Then came another blow. My mother's health declined rapidly. The doctors said it was her heart, years of stress and exhaustion finally catching up. I watched helplessly as the woman who had sacrificed everything for us grew frail and tired. I wanted to be strong for her, but inside, I was crumbling. I remember sitting by her hospital bed, holding her hand, telling her everything would be okay, even when I knew it wouldn't. She would look at me with tired eyes and whisper, "Your smile gives me strength." And so, I smiled. I smiled as I signed medical papers, as I emptied what little savings I had, as I prayed for a miracle that never came. When she passed away, the world felt colder than ever. I stood there at her funeral, people coming up to me saying how brave I was, how beautiful my smile looked even through grief. None of them knew that the smile they admired was the only thing keeping me from falling apart completely. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell them that my smile was a lie, that behind it was a girl who had lost too much, loved too deeply, and broken too often. But I couldn't. Because if I stopped smiling, the world would see the truth. And I wasn't ready for that. After my mother's death, life became a blur. The house that once echoed with her laughter and warmth now felt empty, like a shell stripped of its soul. My brother drifted further away into his own battles with addiction, and I often found myself sitting alone at the kitchen table, staring at the chair where my mother used to sit, wishing for one more conversation, one more hug, one more moment. But life doesn't give second chances. It only moves forward, whether we are ready or not. I knew I couldn't drown in grief forever. I had to survive, even if I didn't know what survival meant anymore. So I found a job at a small library in the city, cataloging books, helping visitors find stories that might carry them away from their own sorrows. The library became my refuge. Among shelves lined with words and worlds, I could breathe. I could hide. I could wear my smile and no one would question it. People saw me as the kind, helpful young woman at the library. They admired my patience, my gentle tone, and, of course, my ever-present smile. Sometimes parents would tell their children, "Look how happy she always is." They didn't know the truth that when I returned home each night, silence wrapped around me like a suffocating blanket. That I often lay awake in bed, clutching my chest, feeling the emptiness expand inside me. It was during one of those endless days at the library that I met Daniel. He was different from Adrian in every way, quiet, reserved, with a thoughtful gaze that seemed to carry its own hidden sorrows. He would visit often, always looking for books on philosophy and art. At first, we exchanged only polite greetings. But slowly, small conversations turned into longer ones. He had a gentle way of speaking, as though each word was chosen carefully, like a brush stroke on a canvas. Daniel never asked me why I smiled so much. He never assumed I was happy. Instead, he asked me questions that made me think. Questions like, do you believe pain makes us stronger, or does it just make us numb? He didn't know how much his words mirrored the battles inside me. I found myself drawn to him, not because he made me forget my pain, but because he understood that it existed, even without me saying it out loud. Over time, our bond deepened. We shared quiet walks through the city, cups of coffee in little cafes, long talks about dreams and fears. I felt something unfamiliar, a sense of comfort, not in hiding my pain, but in knowing that someone else carried theirs too. It wasn't love at first, not the way it had been with Adrian. It was something softer, steadier. Daniel became a companion in my loneliness, a reminder that I wasn't completely invisible to the world. But just when I began to believe life was giving me another chance, fate reminded me of its cruelty. One evening, Daniel and I were walking home when he suddenly stopped, clutching his chest. Panic surged through me as he collapsed to the ground. The ambulance arrived quickly, but I'll never forget the sterile smell of the hospital, the long hours of waiting, the way doctors avoided my eyes when they spoke to me. Daniel had a heart condition, one he had kept hidden, not wanting pity or worry from others. He survived that night, but his prognosis wasn't good. I remember sitting by his bedside, his pale face framed by tubes and wires, his eyes still carrying that same gentle depth. "Don't look at me like I'm already gone," he whispered with a weak smile. And once again, I smiled back, hiding the fear that was tearing me apart inside. In the months that followed, I stayed by his side as much as I could. We read books together in the hospital, talked about places we'd never visit, shared dreams that might never come true. He often told me, "Your smile gives me hope." And even though my heart was breaking, I gave it to him. I gave it freely, because if my smile could bring him even a moment of light in the darkness, then it was worth the pain it cost me. But as his health declined, I felt the old familiar ache of impending loss. I prayed, bargained, begged for a miracle. Yet deep down, I knew how this story would end. The night he passed away, I was sitting by his side, holding his hand. He looked at me one last time and whispered, "Don't stop smiling, Seraphina. Even when it hurts." His grip loosened, his breath faded, and just like that, another piece of my heart was taken from me. I walked home alone that night, the city lights blurring through my tears. People who passed me on the street saw a woman with a gentle smile on her lips, but inside I was crumbling. I wanted to scream, to tear away the mask, to let the world see how shattered I was, but his last words echoed in my mind, and so I smiled. For him. For all the people I had lost. For the strength I didn't know how else to hold on to. The days after Daniel's death were some of the hardest I had ever endured. Grief piled upon grief, like waves crashing over me before I could catch my breath. At the library, I buried myself in work. To others, I looked the same kind, helpful, always smiling. Inside, I was barely holding on. At night, I would sit by my window, staring at the stars, whispering to the people I had lost, hoping they could hear me. Hoping they knew how much I missed them. It was during one of those nights that I realized something. My smile, though born as a mask, had become something else. It wasn't just a way to hide my pain anymore, it was a way to keep the memory of those I had loved alive. My mother had found strength in my smile. Adrian, though gone, had once been healed by it. And Daniel, in his final breath, had asked me to keep smiling. Perhaps my smile wasn't a lie. Perhaps it was my way of surviving, of honoring the love and loss that had shaped me. But survival doesn't mean the pain disappears. Even now, when I laugh with a coworker or greet a stranger with warmth, a part of me aches. A part of me longs for the people I can never have back. I wonder sometimes what life would have been if love hadn't been stolen from me again and again. I wonder if there will ever be a day when my smile isn't heavy with hidden stories. Yet I keep going. Because that's what life demands. Because the world doesn't pause for broken hearts. And because somewhere inside me, I believe that even a smile born of pain can still bring light to someone else's darkness. I often wonder how many times a heart can break before it stops beating altogether. After losing Daniel, I felt like I had already answered that question. Yet here I was, still breathing, still moving, still smiling. People often said to me, "You're so strong, Seraphina." But they didn't see the nights I lay awake, trembling under the weight of memories. They didn't see the mornings I could barely pull myself out of bed. They didn't hear the conversations I had with the ghosts of those I had loved and lost. Life became a pattern of repetition. I woke up, dressed neatly, went to work, greeted people with kindness, returned home to silence, and stared at the ceiling until sleep claimed me. It was a lonely rhythm, but it kept me alive. Some days, I convinced myself that this was enough. That I didn't need more. That perhaps my destiny was simply to give others light while I remained in the shadows. One afternoon at the library, a little girl walked in with her father. She couldn't have been more than 7 years old, with big curious eyes and a shy smile. She wandered among the bookshelves until she found me and asked in the softest voice, "Why do you smile all the time?" The question caught me off guard. No adult had ever asked me that, though I knew many wondered. I knelt down to her height and replied, because sometimes the world needs smiles, even when our hearts are sad." She looked at me thoughtfully and said, "My mom doesn't smile anymore since my brother went to heaven. Maybe she needs someone like you." Her words pierced me deeper than she could understand. I helped her pick out a book and watched as she left with her father, but the echo of her innocence lingered. I realized then that my smile wasn't just for me or for the people I had lost. It was also for those still living, the ones silently carrying pain they couldn't express. As the years passed, I began to dedicate more of myself to helping others. I volunteered at community centers, visited hospitals, read stories to children who were sick. People began to know me not just as the librarian with the kind smile, but as someone who could be trusted with their pain. They would sit with me, sometimes saying nothing, sometimes pouring out secrets they had never spoken aloud. And always, I smiled, not because I was free of sorrow, but because I understood it. There were still nights when grief clawed at me, when loneliness threatened to suffocate me. But now, I had a reason to endure. I remembered Daniel's words, "Don't stop smiling, even when it hurts." And my mother's, "Your smile gives me strength." These voices became my compass, guiding me through the storms. One winter evening, after a long day at the library, I walked home through falling snow. The city was quiet, wrapped in a soft blanket of white. As I passed a cafe, I noticed a group of young people laughing together, their joy spilling into the street. For a moment, envy burned inside me. I longed for that carefree happiness, for companionship, for love. But then I caught my reflection in the cafe window smiling, as always. And suddenly, I understood something. My smile wasn't a mask anymore. It was a bridge. A bridge between my pain and the world's pain. A way to connect, to heal, to remind others that even in sorrow, light can exist. Maybe I would never have the love story I once dreamed of. Maybe I would always carry the scars of loss. But my life still had meaning. My smile still had power. Not long after, I started writing. At first, it was just for myself, journals filled with memories of my mother, poems about Adrian, letters to Daniel that would never be sent. But soon, those writings grew into stories of resilience, of hidden pain, of the quiet strength in ordinary people. With the encouragement of a colleague, I submitted one of my pieces to a local magazine. To my surprise, it was published. Readers wrote letters saying how much it touched them, how it gave them hope. For the first time in years, I felt a flicker of something new: purpose. My words, just like my smile, could reach people I had never met, people who were also hiding behind their own masks. So I kept writing, short stories, essays, even a book. And with every word, I poured out my hidden pain, transforming it into something that could heal others. But life never forgets to test you again. One morning, I received a call that my brother, lost for so long in his battles with addiction, had been found unconscious. The news shattered me, reopening wounds I thought had scarred over. At the hospital, I held his hand, just as I had held my mother's, just as I had held Daniel's. He survived, but barely. The doctors said it was a wake-up call, that he had to change or he would not live much longer. I stayed by his side, encouraging him, reminding him of the boy he once was, the boy who used to laugh freely before life hardened him. Slowly, painfully, he began to fight his way back. It wasn't easy. There were relapses, tears, nights of despair. But there was also progress, tiny steps toward healing. And for the first time, I allowed myself to hope that maybe not all endings had to be tragic. One evening, as we sat together watching the sunset from his hospital window, he turned to me and said, "I don't know how you do it. After everything, after losing Mom, Adrian, Daniel, you still smile. How?" I looked at him, tears blurring the horizon, and whispered, "Because if I stop smiling, I'll lose myself too. And I can't let the world take everything from me." That night, as I walked home, I realized that was the truth I had been carrying all along. My smile was not just a disguise, it was my survival. It was my rebellion against the cruelty of life. It was my promise to the ones I had lost that their love would not be wasted. Now, at 27, my life is far from the dream I once imagined. I am not married, I do not have a family of my own, and my nights are still lonely. But I have found strength in my scars. I have found purpose in my pain. And I have learned that hope can exist even in the saddest of hearts. When people look at me, they still see the woman with the radiant smile. They don't know the full story behind it, and maybe they never will. But that's okay. Because my smile isn't just a mask anymore, it's a gift. A gift I give to others, a reminder that no matter how heavy the pain, we can still choose to face the world with light. And maybe one day, when my own story comes to its end, I hope people will remember me not for the losses I endured, but for the strength I carried. For the smile that hid pain but also gave hope. For the truth that even broken hearts can still beat with love. So yes, my name is Seraphina Hale. I am 27 years old. And I hide my pain behind a smile. But that smile has carried me through storms, kept me alive through grief, and given light to others in their darkness. It is not just a mask. It is my story. If you like this story, please like, share and comment. More interesting stories are coming soon. Subscribe.